Hello and welcome to the endless endurance race at Le Mans in the Ferrari FXX K Evo. In this race we also contend with McLaren P1 GTRs and McLaren Senna GTRs. It's a bit of a dark race, so as you can see I just increased the brightness a bit. If I make it much brighter it looks bad later. You need to take some really crazy cuts if you want this to be an endless endurance race. You don't have to do this if you just want to get around 50 kilometers, but if you want to get past that point, you have to have a plan right from the start. I find this race changes each lap for the first 4 laps, then it normalizes. There's a lot for me to cover in this video, and you may want to jump around or be able to come back to this in the future, so I've added timestamp links in the description area. I will also include a lap that will focus on braking points, and I will actually provide freeze frames so you can see exactly what I look for. First, where is this race located? Well, let's bring up a little subscreen here. It's in Road Collection, over in Legend. You scroll over to No Limits, and then it's Tier 13. And you could run this in any of the 3 cars, but I am choosing this car because of the tests that I've done. I'll get into that a little bit later. Right now, let's look at the controls I use. First off, all assists must be off to do this. There's just no other way. And then I prefer tilt B controls. It's not a requirement, but if you watch my brakes and my gas, you're going to notice sometimes that neither are on. Tilt B controls really helps you to recover from skids quickly. Tilt A can just make you continue to slide because it's full gas or full brakes. With Tilt B, you can release the throttle, steer into the skid, and then get back on the throttle and make your way back on track, etc. Now, this starts to get incredibly hard. You can't just lay back. Like, yeah, look at my clock. I'd have no trouble reaching lap 2 if I don't pass one more car. But I will never reach the Perpetual point if I don't keep pushing ahead. And this particular section gets really hard. It's a very interesting race. The McLaren P1 GTR has the greatest initial acceleration. The Senna GTR has the worst. So they start fighting with each other. I've actually had some Sennas get pitted and be right in front of me, like pitted by another car. Now we're getting to the beginning of lap 2 where we will not see any more FXX K Evos or P1 GTRs. So at this point it starts to spread out and I need to continue to drive incredibly fast. A key element in reaching the Perpetual point is having fast back-to-back lap times. If you've already done endless endurance racing in the past, you probably know that if you have a bad lap, it can push back the Perpetual point several laps. So I have to keep driving incredibly aggressively. Now you're probably wondering, why aren't I driving the Senna GTR? Well, the answer is on the screen. Look at that speed, 401. 402. Well, let's look at the specs for this car. Here we see that the listed top speed is 403, but I was just doing 402. Usually in this game, you're fairly short on top speed on most straightaways, so that's very surprising. The way the acceleration is geared in this FXX K Evo is very interesting. I've really not encountered many cars like this in the game. That gives it an advantage over all other cars at this track. So even though the Senna GTR has a top speed of 405, it takes it a lot longer to get there. This race is kind of the opposite of the McLaren MP4X race that I posted a recent video for. In that one, you do the majority of your passing in the corners and the bots pull away from you on the straights. In this race, it's kind of the other way around. The corners are a big challenge and you have to really tippy-toe in this car because this definitely has the least amount of grip of the other 2 cars. So even there, I went in, I actually missed my braking point. That's why you saw me scrubbing some speed by doing a skid. You can't do that in all cars, but in some cars, if you throw it sideways, you actually have faster braking ability. In certain cars, you'll just keep sliding and sliding. Now, this is a critical point. Driving this the way I do, I often don't get past this lap. And that's interesting because if I use the clock management technique, I can get past 50 kilometers in this car at this track. But driving it the way I did, you burn through the bots. The hardest point of an endless endurance race is right before the perpetual point. What's the perpetual point? Well, keep watching, you're going to see it right away. That's the point. It's basically just past the natural end of your average endurance race. So you know that in a normal race, the bots get harder and harder and further spread out. Well, the perpetual point is just past that. So look, see how the bots are getting grouped closer together again? And you're also going to find that they are incredibly hard at this point. Now, keep your eyes on those guys. You can see that I've got quite a deficit, and if I was in the same car, that deficit would be growing. But because of the way this car is geared, I'm actually going to be closing on them. Now, because of my lack of grip, I have to be very careful with my braking and careful with contact. Like, I've already cracked my windshield. And there's currently a glitch in the game that won't last. The glitch will let you keep your top speed even if you have maximum damage, which we will see in this race. However, my grip will still suffer from this damage. So presently, I can take advantage of that a little bit. My clock is making me quite nervous because I am substantially short on time to finish this lap. So I've got to stay very aggressive and stay very calm, which you probably heard me talking about in my McLaren MP4X video. And that is a very difficult balance. Part of it is knowing how the race has gone in the past. So I know that I am going to be gaining on that bot in front of me down this straight, and I will be able to pass him very soon and then pass a few more on the corner after that. So I just did a little bit of a bump pass there, and then look at this. I got a nice little cluster to overtake. But now we're entering the section where the Senna GTRs have the advantage. They have substantially more grip than I do. So it's very hard to overtake them anywhere in this section. Like, I'm so close to this guy, I should be able to get him at one of these corners. Looking at my time, I don't necessarily have to, but woo, that was risky. Yep, it would have been better to have laid back and just waited. Because as you can see, I've lost the train. So now I've got to catch them because I need to be right in that train as I'm getting back onto the long straight section at the back here. Lap 4. This is where it starts to normalize, and the pace will be the same from here on to the end of the race whenever that happens. So again, I still have to stay really aggressive because I can't afford to lose the train. If I lay back too much, I'm going to lose it, and if I drive way too aggressive, of course, I'm just going to ruin my race. So there's a fine balance. Now, yeah, you can see I'm really heavily damaged now. So the interesting thing is here, based on my clock, I can't lay back. I'd like to, but I can't. And so I'm going to try to go under this guy, which I usually would not do here, and then go under these two. And look at that. No trouble gaining. Okay, some people probably object to me smacking that guy the way I did. I don't know really why I do it. It seems to be part of me kind of being in the zone. But also, it used to be that when you smacked a bot in an older version of this game, that he would actually slow down. Man, my back window just blew up on that last corner. It was either that or the tail light. Anyhow, you don't have to be hitting people the way I do. In fact, I'd recommend you don't. But when you've got maximum damage, I mean, what does it matter? So it just seems to be my style. Bumping in racing is actually pretty common, as you probably know. And there are times in this race that I am bumping to my advantage. However, some of them aren't. I certainly wouldn't do it if I actually owned an FXX K Evo. As you can see, the traffic gets really thick. Now, I don't know if you've noticed this, but another really challenging aspect of this race is those sunspots. In evening versions of this race, I find that they are right in my eyes at times. Man, it's hard. Sometimes they're blinding. Like that's not very good. I had to pick some new braking points because I just couldn't see some of my old lines, my old reference points on the track, because sometimes I'm blinded. It also took me a while to get a sense of my trajectory. So with that little bit of damage I just took, I'm not going to be catching these guys. Like in the McLaren MP4X, I would be passing people here. I'd be gaining like crazy. But I've got quite a grip deficit in this car, so I've got to be careful. So we're going to jump ahead a little bit at the end of this lap to a lap that was reasonably clean, and I'll go through some braking points. Okay, so for this first corner here, I want to take it the same way every single time, except for the first lap, as you might have seen. So I'm going to have to lift a little bit as I start to skid. Now, normally you don't pit someone like that. Okay, so where the grass and that white line start to converge, that's about where I brake into the gas, right about where you saw there. Watch my gas pedal. This is a short braking point. I start braking at about the same time as I start to steer, aiming to cross over where the hand was pointing. Ooh, a little bit slippery there. Watch for those tilt B controls. I lifted off my accelerator for just a pinch and steered into the skid and then straightened it out. Watch on the left-hand side for the distance markers. First one goes by and I'm braking just before the second one. If there's no one in your way at all, you can brake at the second one. So you got to adjust that braking point depending on where traffic is. Okay, and then this next braking point, I've got to adjust it again depending on traffic. So there's a section of a kind of green banners on the side. There's one, and then here's a second one. I'm braking just after that, between that and the distance marker that appears. And I do a little bit of grass braking as well. Getting all four tires on the grass gives you the fastest braking ability in the game. But only two tires on track is the worst. Okay, again, distance markers on the left. There's going to be 1, 2, and just before the third is where I'd normally be on the brakes. I was a little bit late this time and I used this guy to help me slow down. And then here you gotta be careful when you do that. Again, I lifted off the throttle for a pinch, steered hard right to avoid getting pitted, and I saved it. Now with this section, you're gonna watch on your left. There's two distance markers. I don't brake at the first one, I brake just before the second one. So not at it, but a little bit before it. And you can kind of brake your way around traffic here. I thought I was going to be able to get under this guy, but I didn't. Watch on your right, there's a wall that's coming to an end. I start braking usually a little bit after that. I had that guy in my way, so I took him out. For this coming corner here, you're going to watch on your left. You're going to see some distance markers. We're not using either of them. So it's going to be just after the second distance marker, which is blocked by the sun. That speck of shade. I brake at that point into the gas where the yellow-blue starts. Normally you don't brake here. I have a short braking point here, very short. And then a second braking point here. I don't have a reference to give you. It's just you kind of get a feel for it. Same with this, right kind of after the yellow-blue rumble strip on the right. That is ending. I'm on the brakes again, very short for that braking point. Two very short ones. No more braking points. For the section coming up, you want to just lift and feather if you can, brake if you have to. Now right there, I got really thrown off. I had to get on the brakes to save it. Here we are, starting lap 10. It looks wonderful. My timer, of course, is full. I got sideways hitting him. That's not great, but lots of cars here. I'm showing you this lap because it goes wrong for me here. Here's part of it where it goes wrong. I got on the brakes trying to set up a nice speed run, and that's okay. You know, that should have been fine. There's another mistake. So I've already got a couple of mistakes. One or two minor mistakes a lap is okay, but too many minor mistakes and too many major mistakes is not okay. So here we are, I'm gaining nicely, 62 seconds, that's not great, but this should be fine. Under him, oh, that's a mistake. I had to overbrake to regain control, not good. So I am really in trouble. If I get this next corner perfectly, I should be fine. But you can see with my timer the way it is, I believe there's two cars closely grouped together. At this point, I have to go under one and then plan the second one. And I blew it. Okay, so I'm looking at this and I'm going, now I'm feeling desperate. At this point in my mind, I have abandoned the thought of continuing this race. I've abandoned the idea of making it to the next lap. Now I just want to get one more car to get another 10 seconds. I was trying to clip that wall with my back end to stop myself from going into the sand. It's called a wall bounce. If you get a wall bounce right, you lose very little momentum, but it's kind of a losing strategy. You do it when you kind of know you're not going to go much further. Coming up here, I generally do not find bouncing off this wall is any good, so I will not be doing a wall bounce here. Sometimes I've done a wall bounce on this one, but I don't want to do that at this point. I do want to get back on the throttle, get a nice speed run, and then I can coast, because this vehicle will coast quite a while. So I just want to build up a lot of speed heading into this last corner. Now I'm going to speed this up because it coasts for quite a while. We're going 4 times normal speed. As this winds down, you can see that it's a nice distance. As we look at the final numbers, I did not hire the manager or the agent. These are just the base numbers. That's useful for comparison. Now let's look at the profitability and compare that to other well-known endless endurance races. If you stay all on track, you can earn 2,400 fame per lap, but you can't get near this far doing that, so I get 2,317 fame per lap after off-track penalties. Average lap time of 2 minutes and 42 seconds means 858 fame per minute. Now let's bring in some other numbers. If I get in the Audi R8 LMS Ultra at Porsche Short Track, it takes me 40 seconds a lap, so I'm earning 675 fame per minute. In the Porsche 918 RSR Concept, my lap time drops to 38 seconds a lap, so my fame per minute increases to 710. Even though those races both pay 500 fame per lap if you're all on track, you earn more in the Porsche 918 because it has higher specs in every regard compared to the Audi. As I've established, I was earning 858 fame per minute in the Ferrari FXX K Evo at Le Mans. Now we've got the Ferrari FXX K at Porsche Short Track. I do 34 seconds a lap in that car, so that means 945 fame per minute. And that race is substantially easier than the one playing in the background. Then we've got the McLaren MP4X at Le Mans. Monster of a car and a monster payout. 1,930 fame per minute. Now I'll bring in some older benchmarks. The fully upgraded Toyota TS040 in the 10-lap Le Mans. 25 minutes and 50 seconds gets me 1,100 fame per minute. And the Ferrari F40 fully upgraded 4-lap race at Le Mans, 13 minutes 10 seconds, 1,154 fame per minute. All the numbers I'm showing you don't represent my perfect times, they represent my average times. Even those last 2 cup races, they weren't my best possible version, but something I could repeat on a regular basis. So why not just run those cup races all the time? There's nothing wrong with that for daily farming, but it's on bonus fame days that we find the difference. We'll compare the F40 to the Audi. If I drive the F40 on a 100% fame bonus day with the agent hired, I get 60,800 fame. To get that in the Audi, I'd have to drive 22.5 minutes. Sounds like a bad deal, but I can keep going. If I go 45 minutes, I get 121,600 fame. If I got in my Ferrari FXX K, I get 170,100 fame for the same amount of driving. I've thrown up various links for Porsche short versions, all of which are easier than this FXX K Evo, but as you can see, it was pretty possible. And there's a link to the monster race. Thank you for watching.